At 68, Logan Jenkins thought burying his wife after 42 years of marriage was the cruelest goodbye he would ever endure. He was wrong. 6 months later, his only daughter, Madison, stripped away nearly everything he and his wife had built together, then laughed as she handed him the deed to a collapsing Kentucky farmhouse valued at just $15. "Seems about right for you now, Dad," she said. Logan took the deed without begging. Weeks later, beneath the rotting floor of the farmhouse's north barn, he found an iron ring embedded in concrete. When he pulled it, a hidden door opened into darkness and into a secret his late wife had protected for decades. Stay with Logan, because what was buried beneath that worthless farmhouse would expose a betrayal far bigger than his daughter ever imagined. 3 weeks before Logan Jenkins stood inside that ruined Kentucky barn, staring down into darkness, he had still been living in the Cleveland house, where nearly every room carried the memory of his wife. Evelyn had been gone for 6 months, yet Logan still woke at 6:15 every morning, because that was when she used to turn on the kitchen radio. He still made 2 cups of coffee. The first time he realized what he had done, he stood frozen beside the counter, staring at the second mug until the steam disappeared. After that, he kept doing it anyway. Evelyn's blue ceramic cup remained across from him at the breakfast table. Some grief demanded tears. His had become routine. For 42 years, Logan and Evelyn had built their life slowly. They had never been wealthy, but they had been careful. Logan had worked as a maintenance supervisor for a manufacturing company. Evelyn had spent years doing bookkeeping and later private consulting. They raised Madison in that modest Cleveland home, paid for her college education, helped with her wedding, and never once asked her to repay them. Logan believed those sacrifices were what parents did. Madison had begun remembering them differently. At first, her visits after Evelyn's death seemed compassionate. She brought groceries. She organized medication. She sat beside Logan while he sorted condolence cards. Then she began asking questions. Did Mom handle the insurance? Where are the investment statements? Do you still have online access to the savings accounts? Logan answered because Madison was his daughter. Soon she was paying bills from his computer. Then she changed several passwords for security. She collected insurance documents into folders and told Logan she would simplify everything. Trevor Collins, Madison's husband, rarely visited with her. When he did, he walked through the house with an unsettling interest in things Logan had never considered valuable. One afternoon, Logan heard Trevor speaking quietly in the hallway. "The market's still strong," Trevor said. Madison lowered her voice. "He's not ready. He doesn't have to be ready forever." Logan remained in the kitchen. Something inside him tightened. When Madison entered moments later, she smiled as though nothing had happened. "Dad, have you thought about senior living?" Logan looked up. "No. You shouldn't be alone in this house. I've lived here 37 years. That's exactly the problem." She described a retirement community with landscaped grounds, prepared meals, and nurses nearby. Logan understood the advantages, but he also understood what she did not say. The house would be sold. That evening he sat in Evelyn's chair and remembered something she had told him shortly before entering the hospital. "Don't make permanent decisions while you're hurting." At the time, Logan thought she meant grief. Now he wondered if she had meant Madison. The estate meeting took place 11 days later. Madison had arranged it quickly. Logan sat across from her and Trevor at a polished conference table, while documents were placed before them. There were investments, household assets, insurance distributions, and several pieces of property connected to Evelyn's financial records. Madison appeared surprised by some of them. She never mentioned this account, she said. Neither had Logan. Evelyn had always managed certain investments herself. Logan trusted her completely and had never demanded explanations. Madison leaned toward him. "We should consolidate everything." Logan studied the papers. You know what I mean." Trevor smiled. "It's just practical, Logan." Something about the word practical made Logan uneasy. Over the following hour, Madison repeatedly pushed papers toward him. "This one lets me handle the account. This simplifies the house. This prevents probate problems later. Logan's head began aching, numbers blurred. He hated himself for feeling old. Several times he almost signed simply because arguing required more energy than he possessed. Then another document appeared. Madison frowned. What is Ash Hollow? Logan looked at the page. A property in Kentucky. Approximately 40 acres. An abandoned farmhouse barn and surrounding woodland. Logan had never heard Evelyn mention it. Madison scanned an attached tax assessment and suddenly laughed. $15. Trevor took the document. His amusement vanished faster than hers. Logan noticed. Trevor examined the legal description carefully before returning the paper. Probably worthless. Madison smiled. Perfect. Logan looked at her. For what? She leaned back. You keep saying you don't want to feel like we're taking everything. So take this. The casual cruelty hurt more than Logan expected. Madison. What you always said you wanted somewhere quiet. Trevor chuckled. Madison pushed the deed toward her father. Consider it your country retirement plan. Logan stared at the signature line. For one painful second, he remembered Madison at 8 years old, asleep against his chest during a thunderstorm. At 16, calling him after her first car accident. At 23, crying in his arms before her wedding because she was afraid of leaving home. When had his little girl begun measuring people by what they owned, Logan looked directly at her. Madison's smile weakened. He could have shouted. He could have reminded her who paid her tuition when he and Evelyn postponed replacing their leaking roof. He could have listed every sacrifice. Instead, Logan picked up the pen. He signed. Madison seemed almost disappointed. The meeting ended with the Cleveland property and financial arrangements heavily favoring Madison's control, while Logan retained only limited savings. Personal belongings, Evelyn's old pickup truck, and the Kentucky farmhouse. Outside, Madison touched his arm. Dad, don't make this dramatic. Logan gently removed her hand. I didn't. You know we're trying to help. Logan looked at Trevor. Trevor looked away. For the first time, Logan wondered whether Madison herself understood everything her husband wanted, but that did not excuse her. She had chosen to laugh. Logan drove home alone. That night, he packed Evelyn's clothes into boxes. Halfway through, he found her old green cardigan and pressed it against his face. The tears finally came, not only because Evelyn was gone, because the family they had built seemed to be disappearing with her. 2 days later, Logan began examining the documents Madison had dismissed. He found the Kentucky deed. Ash Hollow. He almost threw it away. Then he noticed a separate envelope containing decades of property tax receipts. Logan spread them across the dining table. 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. Every payment had been made by Evelyn, not through an accountant, not through an automated family account, personally. Logan's grief momentarily gave way to confusion. Why would Evelyn quietly pay taxes on a worthless farmhouse for decades? He searched through another folder and found receipts for earlier years. She had protected the property continuously. Logan remembered Trevor's expression at the estate meeting. The laughter had disappeared the instant he saw the legal description. That detail suddenly mattered. Logan walked upstairs and opened Evelyn's closet. Behind an old suitcase sat a small wooden document box Madison had overlooked. It was empty except for one faded road map of Kentucky. A circle had been drawn around Ash Hollow. In Evelyn's handwriting beside it were 4 words. For Logan, if necessary. He read them twice, then a third time. Something changed inside him. Madison believed she had left her father with nothing but a collapsing house worth $15. Perhaps Evelyn had believed otherwise. Logan folded the map carefully. For the first time since his wife's funeral, he had somewhere to go. Logan Jenkins left Cleveland before sunrise on a cold Monday morning. He did not tell Madison he was leaving. There was no dramatic farewell, no final argument, no attempt to make his daughter understand what she had done. Logan had spent enough of his life explaining himself to people he loved. At 68, with grief still sitting heavily inside his chest, He no longer had the strength to beg someone to recognize his worth. He packed everything that still felt like his into Evelyn's old pickup truck. 3 boxes of clothes, a toolbox, several family photographs, Evelyn's blue coffee mug, the small amount of savings Madison had never managed to control, and the deed to a farmhouse supposedly worth $15. Before closing the front door, Logan stood in the hallway and looked back. 37 years. That house had witnessed Madison's first steps, Christmas mornings, arguments, birthday cakes, Evelyn dancing barefoot in the kitchen when their favorite songs played on the radio. Now it felt like a museum dedicated to a life that had ended. Logan touched the doorframe. "Goodbye, Ev." Then he walked away. Cleveland disappeared behind him mile by mile. Concrete buildings became smaller towns. Traffic thinned. Highways became 2-lane roads winding through wooded hills. By afternoon, Logan crossed into Kentucky. He kept Evelyn's faded map on the passenger seat. For Logan, if necessary. Those 4 words bothered him more with every mile. Necessary for what? Had Evelyn known something might happen after her death? Had she anticipated Madison's behavior? Or had the farmhouse been intended for some entirely different emergency? The questions made Logan angry. For 42 years, he had believed there were no serious secrets between him and Evelyn. Now he was driving toward one. Late in the afternoon, he reached Ash Hollow. Calling it a town seemed generous. A weathered church stood near an intersection. A gas station occupied one corner, while a hardware store with faded red siding sat across the road. Beyond them were scattered houses, fields, and wooded hills stretching toward the horizon. Logan stopped at the hardware store to ask for directions. A bell rang when he entered. Behind the counter stood an elderly black man, with broad shoulders, silver hair cut close to his scalp, and reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. "Afternoon," the man said. "Afternoon. I'm looking for Jenkins' farm." The man's expression changed. Jenkins. Logan placed the deed on the counter. "Property outside town. Used to belong to Henry Jenkins." The man slowly removed his glasses. "You Henry's boy?" Logan stiffened. "I'm Logan Jenkins." For several seconds, the stranger simply stared. Then he extended his hand. "Walter Brooks." Logan shook it. Walter's grip remained strong despite his 71 years. "I knew your father," Walter said. "That was unexpected enough. What came next was worse. And I knew Evelyn." Logan's hand went still. "My wife Walter nodded. She came through here every so often." Logan stared at him. "How often? Hard to say. Once a year sometimes twice." "For how long?" Walter hesitated. "Close to 30 years. The store suddenly felt too small." Logan stepped back from the counter. "That's impossible. I'm afraid it isn't. My wife never told me she came here." Walter's face softened. "Then I suppose she had her reasons." "That's not an answer. No." Logan heard anger entering his voice. "She told me those trips were consulting work." Walter looked toward the window. "Maybe some were." And the other's silence. Logan understood immediately. Walter knew more. "What was she doing here? I made a promise. To Evelyn." "Yes." Logan laughed bitterly. "Apparently everybody knew my wife better than I did." Walter absorbed the accusation without defending himself. Finally, he said, "Evelyn loved you, Logan." "You don't know that. I know enough." Logan turned toward the door. Walter called after him. "Your property is 6 miles east. Take Miller Road until the pavement ends. Keep going another mile. You'll see a rusted mailbox without a number." Logan stopped. "And what exactly am I supposed to find there?" Walter's answer came quietly. "Whatever Evelyn believed you might someday need." Logan looked back. "What does that mean?" But Walter only shook his head. "She wanted you to discover it yourself." Logan drove away furious. The road narrowed until tree branches nearly touched above the truck. Eventually, the pavement disappeared. Then he saw the mailbox. Beyond it stretched a dirt driveway swallowed by weeds. Logan turned in. The farmhouse appeared slowly through the trees. His heart sank. Madison had not exaggerated about its condition. The 2-story structure leaned slightly towards the east. White paint had peeled away until gray wood showed beneath it. Several porch boards were missing. One upstairs window was broken, and vines climbed halfway across the front wall. Behind the house stood a large barn with a sagging roof. A rusted hand pump leaned beside an overgrown garden. Logan shut off the engine. Silence surrounded him. Not city silence. Real silence. Wind through grass. Birds somewhere in the woods. His first thought was that he had made a terrible mistake. His second was that he had nowhere else he wanted to go. Logan entered carefully. Dust covered everything. The kitchen ceiling had water stains. Cabinet doors hung crookedly. Mouse droppings covered one corner. But the foundation seemed solid. He spent his first night inside the truck. The next morning, he returned to town for plywood nails, cleaning supplies, and roofing tar. Walter said nothing about their previous conversation. He simply helped Logan load everything. Before Logan left, Walter added an old kerosene lantern. No charge. Logan frowned. Why? You'll need light. The sentence felt strangely deliberate. Over the next 4 days, Logan worked. He repaired one bedroom window, patched the worst roof leak, cleared the kitchen, fixed the front steps enough to make them safe. His back hurt every night. His hands developed blisters. Yet something unexpected happened. He began sleeping. Not well, but deeply. For the first time since Evelyn's death, Logan sometimes went an entire hour without thinking about what he had lost. The farmhouse demanded attention. A broken hinge did not care about grief. A leaking pipe did not care about betrayal. Work gave pain somewhere to go. On Friday afternoon, Logan began scrubbing the kitchen walls. Beside the pantry door, he noticed faint pencil lines on the wooden frame. At first, he assumed they were marks recording a child's height. Then he looked closer. They were dates. June 17, 1998, October 4, 2001, May 22, 2006, August 13, 2012. The dates continued. Logan's pulse quickened. The handwriting was familiar. Evelyn's. He ran his fingertips over the faded marks. She had stood exactly where he was standing. Again and again. For decades. The final date made his breath catch. It had been written only 3 months before Evelyn died. Beneath it was another line. Not a date. 3 words. Under the north barn. Logan stared through the dirty kitchen window. The barn stood beyond the weeds, dark and motionless. He remembered Walter's strange gift. You'll need light? Logan slowly turned toward the kerosene lantern sitting on the table. Whatever Evelyn had hidden from him was not simply connected to this farmhouse. It was waiting beneath it. And tomorrow morning, Logan intended to find out why. Logan Jenkins barely slept that night. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Evelyn's handwriting on the kitchen doorframe, under the north barn. 3 ordinary words, yet they had changed the farmhouse completely. Until that moment, the property had been a refuge, a broken place where a broken man could keep his hands busy. Now every wall seemed to conceal a question. By 7 the next morning, Logan was standing outside the barn. The structure looked even worse up close. Several boards had warped away from the frame, and sunlight entered through narrow gaps in the siding. Inside, decades of dust-covered rusted tools, collapsed shelving, and piles of rotting hay. Logan carried Walter's kerosene lantern despite the daylight. He walked toward the north side. Nothing looked unusual. He began clearing debris. After nearly an hour, he found several floorboards that were noticeably different from the others. They were old, but not nearly as old as the surrounding wood. Someone had replaced them deliberately. Logan crouched and touched one. "Evelyn," he whispered. "What were you doing out here?" He returned to the farmhouse, grabbed a pry bar, then stopped. Walter knew about Evelyn's visits. And Logan had no intention of pretending otherwise anymore. 20 minutes later, he entered the hardware store. Walter looked up. "You found something." It was not a question. 3 words. Walter remained silent. Under the north barn. Something passed through Walter's expression. "Recognition. Come with me," Logan said. Walter glanced toward the back room. "You sure know." But I'm done discovering pieces of my wife's life alone. Walter closed the store early. They returned to the farmhouse together. Inside the barn, Walter stared at the newer boards. "I never came down here with Evelyn," he said. "But you knew I knew she was protecting something. That's conveniently vague." Walter accepted the criticism. "She made me promise that if you ever arrived here with the deed, I could help you. But I wasn't supposed to tell you what to look for." "Why?" "Because she said you needed to choose whether to keep digging." Logan looked at him. "My wife actually said that, those exact words." Logan drove the pry bar beneath the first board. "Then I'm choosing." The nails resisted. Walter joined him. One board came loose, then another. Beneath them was not dirt. Concrete. Logan frowned. The barn was old enough that a poured concrete section beneath only one corner made little sense. They removed several more boards. A rectangular slab emerged. Near its center was a rusted iron ring. The same ring Logan would later remember as the moment his old life divided from everything that came afterward. He wrapped both hands around it and pulled. Nothing. Walter crouched beside him. Together. They pulled again. The slab shifted. A thin black line appeared around its edge. "It's a hatch," Logan whispered. They cleared the remaining wood. The concrete lid was extraordinarily heavy, but after several attempts they raised it enough to expose a narrow opening. Cold air rose from below. A set of metal steps disappeared into darkness. Walter looked at Logan. "You still want to know?" Logan picked up the lantern. "I didn't drive 400 miles to stop now." He descended first. The underground chamber was perhaps 12 feet long and 8 feet wide. Metal shelves lined the walls. Several sealed boxes sat beneath heavy plastic coverings. Old maps had been rolled into tubes. A wooden cabinet stood against the far wall. There was no treasure, no gold, no stacks of money. Yet Logan immediately understood that whatever had been hidden there mattered. Someone had spent considerable effort protecting paper. Walter descended behind him. "Lord, you've never seen this, never." Logan opened the nearest metal box. Inside were ledgers wrapped in waxed cloth. The first dated back more than 40 years. Names, parcel numbers, sale prices, survey references. He opened another box. Photographs. Black and white images of farms, boundary markers, machinery, and groups of men Logan did not recognize. Then one photograph slipped from his hand. He picked it up. His father stared back at him. Henry Jenkins. Logan had not seen that face in nearly 30 years. Henry stood beside this very farmhouse, younger, but unmistakable. Logan swallowed. "I thought he lost this place." Walter nodded slowly. "That's what everyone believed." Logan turned. "What do you mean?" Walter hesitated. "Your father didn't leave Ash Hollow because he wanted to." Logan felt irritation rise again. "Then why?" "I don't know enough to tell you properly." Logan returned to the boxes. A folder contained an old deed. Henry Jenkins's name appeared clearly across the top. Another document showed a later transfer to a holding company Logan had never heard of. Then another deed appeared decades later. The purchaser was represented by an intermediary. Logan followed the dates. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The farmhouse had once belonged to Henry. It had been transferred away during the financial collapse that destroyed Logan's father. Then, years later, someone had quietly regained control of it. Evelyn. Not directly. But Logan recognized her handwriting in the supporting documents. His chest tightened. All his life, Logan had believed Henry ruined himself through foolish investments. Henry died carrying that shame. Logan had resented him for years. Now he no longer knew what to believe. Walter opened another container. "Logan." Something in his voice made Logan turn. Walter held a photograph. Logan took it. Evelyn stood beside Henry. They were older than in the first photographs. The date printed on the back was 2003. Logan stared at it. That can't be right. But it was. In 2003, Logan believed his father and Evelyn had not spoken in years. Yet here they were, standing together outside the barn. Evelyn held a folder. Henry had one hand resting on her shoulder. They were both looking directly at the camera. Logan sank onto an overturned crate. She lied to me. Walter did not argue. She lied for years. His anger was not clean. It mixed with grief, love, confusion, and the unbearable impossibility of confronting someone who was already dead. Why wouldn't she tell me? Walter lowered his voice. Maybe the answer is here. Logan wiped his eyes roughly. They continued searching. Inside the wooden cabinet he found survey maps showing Ash Hollow divided into dozens of numbered parcels. Several boundaries had been marked in red. The Jenkins property sat near the center. One map contained geological symbols Logan did not understand. Another folder contained newspaper clippings about bankrupt farmers and disputed land sales. Then, Logan noticed a metal box pushed behind the cabinet. Unlike the others, it was small. He pulled it free. His hands began trembling before he even opened it. Inside lay a single cream-colored envelope. Logan Jenkins, Evelyn's handwriting. He stopped breathing for a moment. Walter moved toward the stairs. I'll give you privacy. No. Walter stopped. Logan held the envelope. If this changes what I know about my family, I don't want to be alone when it happens. Walter nodded. Logan slid one finger beneath the sealed edge. Then he heard something above them, a faint scrape. Both men froze. Walter extinguished the lantern slightly until the flame became smaller. Did you hear that? Logan nodded. They climbed carefully towards the entrance. No one was inside the barn. But daylight revealed something Logan had not noticed earlier. Footprints. They crossed the dusty floor from the barn door toward the concealed hatch. Logan looked down at his own boots. The prints were different. Walter's, too. Someone had walked directly to the hidden entrance. And judging by how sharply the tread remained pressed into the dust, it had happened recently. Logan looked toward the open barn door. The fields beyond were empty. His hand tightened around Evelyn's unopened letter. The secret beneath the farmhouse was no longer merely about his dead wife or his father. Someone living knew it was here, and that person had been looking for it. For several minutes, Logan Jenkins stood at the top of the hidden stairway, with Evelyn's letter clenched in his hand. The fresh footprints disturbed him, but the envelope frightened him more. Someone had recently entered the barn. Yet Evelyn had been hiding something from him for decades. Walter walked outside and searched around the property while Logan returned to the farmhouse. He sat at the kitchen table beneath the pencil marks Evelyn had left on the doorframe. When Walter returned, his expression was grim. No vehicle tracks I can make out. Ground's too hard near the road. So whoever came knew where to walk. Looks that way. Logan stared at the envelope. Walter sat opposite him. You don't have to open it today. Yes, I do. Logan broke the seal. Inside were 8 handwritten pages. The first line almost broke him. My dearest Logan, if you are reading this, then the truth has outlived both my fear and your father's shame. Logan stopped. His fingers trembled. Walter remained silent. Logan continued. Evelyn explained that everything Logan believed about Henry Jenkins's downfall had been incomplete. More than 40 years earlier, Ash Hollow had been a struggling agricultural community. Farms passed from parents to children, and few families possessed significant savings. Then, representatives from a regional development company began appearing. They offered farmers money for parcels that seemed nearly worthless. When families refused, strange problems followed. Boundary disputes, unexpected liens, questionable tax claims. Loans suddenly called due. Henry noticed the pattern. He began comparing county records. What he discovered frightened him. The company already possessed geological surveys showing an enormous limestone formation beneath the hills surrounding Ash Hollow. Commercial extraction could make certain parcels extraordinarily valuable, but buying them at fair market value would cost millions. So the company acquired them before anyone knew what lay underneath. Henry tried to organize the farmers. Then his own financial problems began. Logan lowered the letter. Memories returned. His father sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by bills, his mother crying behind a closed bedroom door. Neighbors whispering. Logan had been 24 when Henry finally left Ash Hollow. He remembered asking why his father had destroyed everything. Henry had answered only, "Someday you'll understand." Logan had considered that cowardice. Now shame burned inside him. He returned to Evelyn's letter. Henry had gathered deeds, survey maps, payment records, and statements from families who believed they had been cheated. He planned to expose the company, but before he could, his reputation collapsed. A newspaper reported that Henry had made reckless investments. Creditors descended. The Jenkins farm was transferred away. Henry became the public example of a foolish farmer who had lost everything. But Evelyn never believed it. Years later, after Logan and Evelyn were married, Henry contacted her privately. "Why her?" Logan whispered. Walter waited. Logan found the answer several paragraphs later. Henry knew Logan still carried anger toward him. He feared that asking his son for help would drag Logan into a fight that had already destroyed one generation. Evelyn, however, had bookkeeping experience. She could understand the records. She began investigating quietly. Over the years, she discovered that several corporations involved in Ash Hollow's land purchases had changed names, dissolved, or merged, but the ownership trail survived. Then came the revelation that made Logan stand abruptly. Evelyn had bought the farmhouse back. Not under her own name initially. She used an intermediary and gradually resolved liens until legal control was secured. She never restored the house. That would attract attention. Instead, she paid the taxes every year and kept the property looking forgotten. The $15 figure on the old assessment had become useful camouflage. Worthless land rarely attracted questions. Logan walked toward the window. "You protected it," he whispered. He had accused Evelyn of lying. Technically, she had. But the lie looked different now. Walter spoke gently. She was protecting something bigger than a house. Logan returned to the letter. Evelyn admitted that she had considered telling him many times, but legal threats continued. People connected to the original company still monitored property transfers around Ash Hollow. She feared Logan's anger toward Henry would make him reject the entire matter before examining the evidence. Then Evelyn became ill. She realized she might never have time to explain everything. So she prepared the farmhouse for the possibility that Logan would someday need it. The final pages addressed him directly. "Logan, your father, was not perfect. Neither was I. We both made the mistake of believing silence could protect someone we loved. Perhaps it protected you from danger. Perhaps it only created another kind of pain. For that, forgive me if you can." Logan's eyes filled. He continued, "The land may be valuable. You will find geological reports among Henry's papers. But please understand the money was never the reason he fought." Logan looked toward the barn. He and Walter returned underground. This time they examined the survey tubes carefully. Walter spread one map across a metal shelf. Colored lines indicated geological formations beneath multiple properties. A technical report estimated enormous limestone reserves. Logan struggled with the terminology, but the conclusion was clear. The ground beneath Ash Hollow possessed substantial commercial value. "So Madison gave me something worth a fortune," maybe Walter said. But Logan remembered Evelyn's warning. The money was never the reason. They opened Henry's ledgers. Page after page contained family names: Henderson, Brooks, Miller, Washington, Parker. Beside each were parcel numbers, original boundaries, sale prices, and handwritten notes. Brooks, Logan said. Walter went still. "My parents?" Logan looked at him. Walter's voice weakened. "They lost 60 acres when I was 17. My father died believing he'd failed us." The two men stared at each other. Suddenly, the documents were no longer historical records. They were wounds. Logan opened another folder. Inside were copies of deeds showing suspicious boundary changes. Several families appeared to have surrendered more acreage than their agreements specified. Others received payments far below amounts documented in internal correspondence. Henry had not been collecting evidence for himself. He had been building a case for Ash Hollow. Logan finally understood. If the documents were genuine and legally usable, they could potentially establish that dozens of families had been cheated. Some victims were dead. Their children were not. Walter sat down heavily. All these years, Logan placed a hand on his shoulder. For the first time since arriving in Kentucky, his own pain became part of something larger. Madison's betrayal still hurt. Evelyn's secrecy still hurt. But beneath those wounds was a responsibility Logan had never expected. He folded Evelyn's letter and placed it inside his jacket. Then he noticed the footprints again. Someone had known exactly where the hatch was located, not wandered near it, not discovered it accidentally, gone directly to it. Walter. I know. If somebody knows what Henry collected, they may know what it can prove. Logan looked around at the boxes. Yesterday, he had wondered whether the farmhouse could give him somewhere to begin again. Now he understood that beginning again might require defending it. He climbed from the chamber and closed the concrete hatch. Together, he and Walter replaced the loose boards as carefully as possible. Before leaving the barn, Logan turned back. Madison had laughed when she gave him this place. She believed she had discarded her aging father onto worthless land. She had no idea what rested beneath his feet. But somewhere beyond those quiet Kentucky hills, someone else might. And unlike Madison, that person apparently understood exactly how dangerous the truth could be. Madison Jenkins learned that her father had begun asking questions about the Ash Hollow property on a Thursday morning. She was sitting at the marble island in her Cleveland kitchen when Trevor entered carrying his laptop. "You need to see this." Madison barely looked up. "See what your father..." That got her attention. Trevor placed the computer in front of her. On the screen were county property records connected to Logan's farmhouse. He requested copies of historical deeds, Trevor said, and survey records. Madison frowned. So why would he do that? Maybe he's bored. Trevor stared at her as if the answer irritated him. "Madison, nobody researches 40-year-old property records because they're bored." She pushed the laptop away. "You said the place was worthless. I said it looked worthless." The distinction made Madison uncomfortable. Trevor had spent the previous week researching Ash Hollow. Several companies had recently purchased parcels around the community. The largest buyer was Calder Ridge Development, a corporation involved in construction materials and industrial land projects. Some neighboring properties had attracted offers reaching into 7 figures. Madison's face changed. Millions, potentially. She remembered laughing during the estate meeting. $15. Perfect. Suddenly, the joke did not feel funny. What if Dad sells it? Trevor closed the laptop. Then you gave away something valuable. Madison bristled. We gave it to him. You insisted. The accusation stung, because it was true. Within an hour, Madison called Logan. He was repairing a kitchen cabinet when his phone rang. He saw her name and considered ignoring it. "Hello, Dad. How are you?" Her cheerfulness was immediate and unnatural. "I'm fine. How's Kentucky?" Logan glanced toward the barn through the window. Quiet. Madison laughed lightly. "Well, I've been thinking. Maybe sending you down there wasn't the best idea. You didn't send me anywhere." "You know what I mean." Logan said nothing. Madison continued. "The farmhouse sounds unsafe. Trevor and I were talking, and maybe we should take it back." "Take it back. We could handle the property. You could return to Cleveland. I found some beautiful apartments near us." Logan almost admired how quickly concern appeared when money entered the picture. "You laughed when you gave me this place. That was a joke. It didn't sound like one. Dad, please don't turn everything into an emotional issue." Logan looked at Evelyn's handwriting on the doorframe. "I'm keeping the farm." Silence. Then Madison's voice hardened. "Why? Because it belongs to me." She ended the call soon afterward. 2 days later, a black SUV appeared on Logan's driveway. Madison stepped out first. Trevor followed. Logan was standing on the porch beside Walter, who had come to help replace damaged railing. Madison looked around. The farmhouse had already changed. Broken windows were boarded or repaired. Weeds had been cut away from the porch. Several rotten boards had been replaced. Her father had changed too. His shoulders seemed straighter. There was color in his face. For months after Evelyn's death, Madison had seen him as fragile, almost fading. Now he looked occupied, needed, alive. Something about that disturbed her. Dad, you could have called. We wanted to surprise you. You succeeded? Walter stepped forward. Walter Brooks. Madison gave him a brief smile. Madison Jenkins, Logan's daughter. Walter knew exactly who she was. Logan had told him everything. Trevor studied the property rather than the people. His eyes moved from the house to the surrounding acreage, then to the barn. Logan noticed. Madison entered the farmhouse and looked around. You're actually living here, I am. This place is barely habitable. It's improving. You could be living comfortably in Cleveland. I wasn't comfortable in Cleveland. The words landed harder than Logan intended. Madison folded her arms. So now strangers are your family. Walter quietly excused himself and returned outside. Logan's expression tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Make me guilty because somebody showed me kindness. I'm your daughter, and I was your father when you laughed at that deed. Madison's face reddened. I was under enormous pressure after Mom died. So was I. For a moment, neither spoke. Madison wanted to apologize. Some small part of her genuinely did, but apology required admitting what she had become. Instead, she said Trevor thinks there may be complications with the title. Logan immediately understood. There it is. What the reason you came? Madison looked away. Outside, Trevor walked toward the barn. Walter saw him. Need something just looking around? Private property still applies inside private property. Trevor smiled. I'm family. Then act like it. Trevor waited until Walter returned to the porch before slipping through the barn door. Inside, he examined the floor. He had never seen the hidden chamber, but he knew enough. Years earlier, his father, Douglas Collins, had occasionally mentioned Ash Hollow. Trevor had dismissed those stories until he saw Evelyn's papers months before her death. Now he searched for signs of disturbance. The replaced boards were subtle, not subtle enough. Trevor crouched. Behind him, Logan's voice cut through the barn. What are you doing? Trevor stood quickly. Nothing. You're on your knees examining my floor. I dropped my keys. They're in your hand. Trevor looked down. The mistake lasted only a second. It was enough. Logan stepped closer. You knew. Knew what? That this land mattered. Trevor's expression hardened. Don't be ridiculous. Walter appeared behind Logan. You should leave. Madison entered moments later. What happened? It happened your husband was searching my barn. Trevor laughed. Logan's becoming paranoid. Madison looked between them. Then she noticed dust on Trevor's knees. Something cold entered her stomach. But she chose her husband. Dad, maybe this proves you're not thinking clearly. Logan stared at her. Madison continued faster now. You signed those estate documents when you were grieving. If this property becomes some kind of obsession, maybe we need to review whether you were mentally capable of making those decisions. Logan understood the threat immediately. You want to challenge the deed. I want to protect you. No. You want the land. Madison flinched. Trevor stepped forward. Watch yourself. Walter moved between them. That's enough. Logan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. For most of my life, Madison, I thought staying calm meant letting people take what they wanted. Your mother understood something I didn't. Madison's eyes narrowed. What that kindness is not the same as helplessness. The words silenced her. Logan pointed toward the driveway. Leave. Madison stared at the man standing before her. This was not the grieving father she had manipulated in Cleveland. She hated that realization. And somewhere beneath the anger was fear. She followed Trevor toward the SUV. Before getting inside, Madison turned. "This isn't over." Logan said nothing. She slammed the door. The SUV disappeared down the dirt road. Walter looked toward the barn. He went straight to the north side. "I know. You think he knows about the chamber?" "Maybe not exactly." Logan remembered Trevor's expression when he had first seen the deed. "But he knows enough to be afraid of what I might find." That evening, Logan locked Evelyn's letter and Henry's most important records inside a metal cabinet in the farmhouse. For the first time, Madison's betrayal no longer seemed like the entire problem. Something larger had been moving around his family for years, and Trevor Collins was standing much closer to it than Logan had ever imagined. 3 mornings after Madison and Trevor left Ash Hollow, a silver sedan appeared at the end of Logan Jenkins's driveway. Logan was replacing damaged siding when the car stopped beside Evelyn's old pickup. A man in his early 50s stepped out wearing polished shoes that looked absurd against the Kentucky mud. He carried a leather portfolio and wore the practiced smile of someone accustomed to being welcomed, Mr. Jenkins, who's asking Grant Mercer. Calder Ridge Development. The name immediately sharpened Logan's attention. He set down his hammer. "What do you want?" Grant glanced across the property. "Our company is expanding an industrial project in this region. Your parcel could provide useful access. Access to what? A transportation corridor." Logan almost smiled. "You drove all the way out here to discuss a road." Grant opened his portfolio. "We're prepared to make you an offer." He handed Logan a document. The number printed near the top was impossible to misunderstand. $2,400,000. Logan read it twice. For a man who had recently watched his daughter laugh over a $15 assessment, the figure felt unreal. "You're offering $2.4 million for a road for the property." "All 40 acres. "Yes." Logan looked toward the barn. Grant followed his gaze for only a second. That second was enough. "I'm not interested." Grant's smile weakened. "Mr. Jenkins, I strongly recommend considering it. I just did. You may not receive another offer this generous. Then I suppose we've saved each other time." Grant returned to his car without arguing. But before leaving, he said something Logan could not forget. Sometimes old land creates new problems. That afternoon, Logan showed Walter the offer. Walter whistled softly. $2.4 million. Evelyn was right. About the land, about the money not being the important part. They descended into the hidden chamber. For several days, Logan had been organizing Henry's records. Now the Calder Ridge offer gave those documents urgency. They spread the geological surveys across a table. One report identified a massive limestone formation extending beneath several Ash Hollow properties. The farmhouse sat near a natural geological break, where extraction equipment could reach the deposit with far less excavation. Walter traced the map. "They don't need your land for a road, no. They need the entrance." Logan nodded. Another group of documents revealed something darker. Several corporations involved in acquiring Ash Hollow farms decades earlier had eventually merged into companies that became part of Calder Ridge. Names changed. Executives changed. The business survived. Logan felt cold despite the underground air. They're connected to what happened to Henry. "And my parents," Walter said. 2 days later, the county arrived. Not Calder Ridge. The county. A white utility truck stopped outside the farmhouse, and 2 inspectors stepped onto the porch. They cited unsafe electrical wiring, structural deficiencies in the barn, questionable septic conditions, and unapproved repairs. Logan did not dispute that the farmhouse needed work. What disturbed him was the speed. He had lived there for weeks without anyone caring. Now, 48 hours after rejecting $2.4 million, officials threatened to condemn the property if numerous repairs were not completed. Walter read the notice that evening. This isn't coincidence. Logan sat heavily at the kitchen table. What if they're right about what I don't have money for lawyers and engineers? Maybe this is exactly how Henry lost. The admission hurt. Logan had spent days feeling stronger. Suddenly, he was 68 again, living in a damaged farmhouse while confronting a corporation capable of spending more on attorneys in 1 month than he had earned in years. What if I sell? Walter did not judge him. That's your decision? 2.4 million would solve every problem I have. Probably. Logan looked at Evelyn's marks on the door frame, but not theirs. Walter understood. The next morning someone knocked. An elderly woman named Dorothy Washington stood on the porch holding a folder. Behind her were 2 men Logan had seen in town. "I heard you've been asking about old land records," Dorothy said. Logan invited them inside. Dorothy placed a deed on the table. "My parents owned 83 acres south of Miller Creek. The original document showed 83. A later transfer showed 56. What happened to the other 27? Logan asked. "That's what my father spent 30 years asking." The next man, Calvin Parker, had similar papers. Then another family arrived. By afternoon, Logan's kitchen was crowded. Old deeds, tax notices, boundary surveys, letters, stories. The details differed, but the pattern did not. Families had lost acreage through questionable transfers, unexpected debts, altered boundaries, or purchases made before the land's geological value became public. Walter brought one of Henry's ledgers upstairs. Dorothy saw her father's name. Her hands began shaking. "He knew Henry was documenting all of it," Logan said. Dorothy covered her mouth. For decades, these families had believed their parents had simply failed. Now the possibility existed that they had been deliberately targeted. Logan finally understood what Evelyn had meant. The land could make him wealthy. The records could restore dignity to people who had carried inherited shame for half a century. He could not walk away. Walter knew someone who might help. Rebecca Lawson had practiced property and land rights law before leaving private practice to teach at a small Kentucky college. She arrived 2 days later. Rebecca spent nearly 7 hours examining documents. She asked few questions. When she finally removed her glasses, everyone in Logan's kitchen went silent. "If these originals authenticate," she said, "you may have evidence of coordinated civil fraud involving multiple properties." Dorothy began crying. Rebecca continued, "But this will be difficult. Statutes of limitation. Corporate restructuring, deceased witnesses. Calder Ridge will attack every weakness. Can we fight?" Logan asked. Rebecca looked at Henry's ledgers. Yes, that single word changed the room. For the first time, the families did not look like victims discussing the past. They looked like people preparing to reclaim it. Rebecca stayed after everyone else left. "There's one more thing," she said. She placed a document in front of Logan. It was an old acquisition agreement involving one of the companies connected to Calder Ridge. A junior broker had witnessed the transaction. Logan read the signature. Douglas Collins. He recognized the surname immediately. Trevor's father. Rebecca nodded. Logan remembered Trevor searching the barn, his interest in the deed, his expression during the estate meeting, the fresh footprints. Douglas Collins worked for them at least for one company in the chain. Logan sat back. Suddenly, Madison's behavior seemed connected to something neither of them had fully understood. Or perhaps Trevor understood far more than he had admitted. Rebecca closed the folder. "If your son-in-law knows these records exist, we need to secure them immediately." Outside darkness had settled across Ash Hollow. Logan looked toward the barn. Only weeks earlier he had arrived believing Madison had discarded him on worthless land. Now a corporation was offering millions for it. Dozens of families were depending on what lay beneath it. And the family of Logan's own son-in-law had appeared inside the very records Evelyn spent decades protecting. The farmhouse was no longer simply his second chance. It had become evidence. And Logan knew powerful people rarely paid millions for something, unless they feared what would happen if they could not control it. Rebecca Lawson did not believe in coincidences. By the following Monday, she had traced Douglas Collins's name through 4 decades of corporate filings, land transfers, and archived county records. The pattern led back to Ash Hollow. She arrived at Logan Jenkins's farmhouse carrying 2 thick folders and an expression that told him the news would hurt. Walter was already there. Rebecca placed the first folder on the kitchen table. Douglas Collins wasn't just a witness on one transaction. Logan sat opposite her. What was he, a junior land broker? For whom? One of the companies that acquired properties around Ash Hollow. Walter's jaw tightened. Rebecca explained that Douglas had worked for Belmore Land Holdings, a company involved in purchasing several local farms during the period Henry Jenkins was gathering evidence. Years later, Belmore disappeared through mergers and acquisitions. Its assets moved through other corporations. Eventually, parts of that network became connected to Calder Ridge Development. What happened to Douglas, Logan asked. He left the company and went into real estate. Successfully, Douglas built a profitable portfolio of commercial and residential properties. When he died, Trevor inherited part of that wealth. Logan leaned back. So Trevor grew up knowing about Ash. Hollow. Not necessarily. Rebecca opened the second folder. But I think he learned. The answer came from Evelyn's own records. Months before her death, Evelyn had requested updated copies of several Ash Hollow deeds. One request included correspondence that referenced Belmore Land Holdings. Trevor had visited Logan and Evelyn's Cleveland home during that same period. Logan remembered the afternoon. Evelyn had been upstairs resting. Trevor had offered to organize papers on her desk. At the time, Logan thought he was being helpful. Now the memory felt poisonous. He saw them, Logan said. Rebecca nodded. That's my suspicion. Walter looked toward the barn, and then Evelyn died. Logan's eyes hardened. Careful. I'm not suggesting anything happened to her. Rebecca immediately agreed. There is no evidence of that. Evelyn was ill. We stay with what we can prove. Logan appreciated the distinction. There had already been enough betrayal without inventing another. Rebecca continued. After Evelyn's death, Trevor had searched public records connected to Ash Hollow. Digital access logs and corporate inquiries suggested someone associated with one of his businesses had researched the Jenkins parcel. Then Trevor began pressuring Madison. Logan saw the pattern clearly. Sell the Cleveland house, control the liquid assets, give the worthless Kentucky farmhouse to the grieving old man. Wait. If Logan abandoned it, Trevor could arrange to acquire it through another company. What company? Logan asked. Rebecca slid a document toward him. North Star Property Partners. Logan read the registered contact, a business associate of Trevor's. His stomach turned. He planned this. Parts of it, yes. Walter shook his head. And Madison? That question hurt more. Rebecca had no legal document capable of answering it. Logan did. His memories, Madison's laughter, her pressure, her threat to challenge his mental capacity. Trevor might have guided the scheme, but Madison had chosen cruelty herself. In Cleveland, Madison was discovering the same truth from the opposite side. She stood in Trevor's home office holding a printed email she had found while looking for tax documents. The subject line read, Ash Hollow Acquisition Options. Her hands began trembling. Trevor entered. What are you doing? Madison turned. What is North Star Property Partners? His face answered before his mouth did. Business, connected to my father's farm. Trevor walked toward her. Give me that. She stepped back. You knew that the property was valuable, I suspected, when Trevor said nothing. Madison's voice cracked. When before the estate meeting. The room seemed to tilt. You let me laugh at him. Trevor's expression hardened. You wanted the Cleveland assets. You told me the farm was worthless. And you believed me because you wanted to. The words struck with brutal accuracy. Madison stared at him. She wanted to blame everything on Trevor. It would have been easier. But she remembered her own voice. Perfect. She remembered pushing the deed toward Logan. Consider it your country retirement plan. Trevor had manipulated her greed. He had not created it. You used me. Yes, Trevor said coldly. And you used your father. Madison slapped him. Neither spoke afterward. That evening, Trevor packed a small bag and left. He did not tell Madison where he was going. He drove south. In Ash Hollow, Logan was securing Henry's records. Rebecca had arranged for the most important originals to be professionally copied the following morning. Until then, they remained inside the hidden chamber. Near midnight, Logan woke to a sound outside. Metal striking wood. He sat up. Another sound. From the barn. Logan called Walter. Then he took a flashlight and stepped outside. The barn door stood open. Inside, a narrow beam of light moved across the floor. Logan stopped. Trevor. The light froze, then went dark. Logan entered. Trevor appeared near the north wall holding a pry bar. Several floorboards had already been removed. "You should have sold," Trevor said. Logan's heart pounded. "You came here before?" Trevor smiled faintly. "The footprints." "So it was you. I knew Evelyn had something. I just didn't know how much." Trevor moved toward the hatch. Logan blocked him. "Get off my property. You have no idea what those papers can do." "I'm beginning to." Headlights swept across the barn. Walter arrived with 2 neighbors. Trevor panicked. He shoved Logan aside and reached toward an open container he had brought with him. Logan smelled gasoline. Walter saw it too. "Don't." Trevor grabbed the container. Calvin Parker tackled him before he could reach the hatch. The gasoline spilled harmlessly across bare dirt several feet away. Within minutes, sheriff's deputies arrived. Trevor was arrested for trespassing and attempted destruction of property. As a deputy searched his jacket, he found a phone and folded documents. Rebecca arrived before dawn. She examined copies of the papers under the farmhouse kitchen light. Then she stopped. Logan. He looked over her shoulder. The documents contained correspondence between Trevor and 2 Calder Ridge executives. One message discussed recovering historical Jenkins materials. Another referenced delaying any acquisition until Logan abandoned the property. Rebecca looked up. "This is the connection we needed." Logan should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt exhausted. His son-in-law had tried to destroy the evidence his wife and father had protected for decades, and his daughter had helped place Logan in the vulnerable position Trevor needed. Madison arrived that afternoon after learning about the arrest. She stood beside her car, unable to meet Logan's eyes. "I didn't know he would do this." Logan believed her, but belief was not forgiveness. "No," he said quietly. "You didn't." Madison began crying. "Dad, Trevor lied to you. He used you, but he didn't make you laugh at me." Madison closed her eyes. There was nothing she could say. For once, Logan did not rescue his daughter from the consequences of silence. He walked back toward the farmhouse. Behind him, Madison remained alone in the driveway, and for the first time she understood that the greatest thing she had lost was never the land. It was the trust of the man she had believed would forgive her forever. 3 weeks after Trevor Collins was arrested inside Logan Jenkins's barn, Rebecca Lawson filed a civil lawsuit on behalf of Logan and 14 Ash Hollow families. The filing named Calder Ridge Development and several successor corporations connected to the companies Henry Jenkins had investigated decades earlier. For Logan, signing his name beneath the complaint felt different from signing the papers Madison once pushed across the estate table. Back then, his signature had come from exhaustion. This one came from choice. Calder Ridge responded immediately. Its attorneys did not begin by attacking Henry's records. They attacked Logan. Court filings described him as a grieving 68-year-old widower whose judgment had deteriorated after Evelyn's death. They suggested Rebecca and several Ash Hollow residents had influenced him after discovering potentially valuable mineral rights. Soon, local reporters appeared outside the farmhouse. One headline called the case the Ash Hollow Fortune Fight. Logan hated it. "This isn't about a fortune," he told Rebecca. "I know. But they're making me look like some confused old man who found buried papers and started imagining conspiracies. That's intentional. Rebecca closed her laptop. If they can make people doubt you, they don't have to explain the documents. Then Calder Ridge's attorneys found the person who could damage Logan most, Madison. She received a subpoena requesting testimony about her father's mental condition during the months following Evelyn's death. Trevor released pending further proceedings, contacted her through his attorney. His message was simple. If Madison testified that Logan had become forgetful, emotionally unstable, and incapable of handling complex financial matters, Calder Ridge could argue that others had exploited him. Trevor added a personal warning. Their financial future depended on stopping the lawsuit. Madison sat alone in her Cleveland kitchen, reading the message repeatedly. Months earlier, that argument might have worked. Money had once seemed like security. Now the expensive kitchen felt like evidence of everything she had mistaken for love. Still, fear remained. If Trevor's connections collapsed, investments tied to their marriage could disappear. Her comfortable life might vanish. Madison began drafting notes for her testimony. Dad became confused after Mom died. He struggled with paperwork. He was emotionally vulnerable. Every statement contained enough truth to sound convincing. That made the lie worse. On the morning of the hearing, Logan entered the county courthouse beside Rebecca. Walter and several Ash Hollow families followed. Dorothy Washington carried a photograph of her parents. Calvin Parker carried his grandfather's original deed. They were no longer simply supporting Logan. They were carrying generations into the courtroom. Then Logan saw Madison. She sat near the opposite aisle. Their eyes met. Madison expected anger. Instead, Logan gave her nothing. No pleading. No accusation. No desperate expression asking her to choose him. He simply turned away. That silence hurt more than if he had shouted. Madison remembered being 9 years old and waking after midnight with a fever. Logan had carried her to the car, wrapped in his winter coat. She remembered college tuition arriving when she knew her parents were struggling. She remembered Logan standing outside the bridal room on her wedding day. "You sure?" he had asked. When she nodded, he smiled. "Then I'm sure too." He had trusted her choices even when they cost him. Now she was preparing to use his grief against him. The hearing began. Calder Ridge's attorneys argued that Henry's documents were incomplete, outdated, and potentially unreliable. Then they questioned Logan. "Mr. Jenkins, after your wife died, did your daughter assist with your finances?" "Yes." "Because you were having difficulty managing them." "Because I trusted her." The attorney paused. "Were you grieving?" "Of course. Did grief affect your concentration?" "Yes." "So your judgment was impaired." Rebecca stood. Objection sustained. The attorney changed direction. "Isn't it true you signed multiple estate documents without fully reading them?" Logan looked toward Madison. "Yes." "Why?" "Because the person handing them to me was my daughter." The courtroom became quiet. Madison lowered her head. Then her name was called. She walked to the witness stand with shaking hands. After being sworn in, Calder Ridge's attorney began carefully. "Ms. Jenkins, following your mother's death, did you observe changes in your father?" "Yes." "Was he forgetful sometimes?" "Did you believe he could independently manage complicated financial matters?" Madison looked at Trevor. Then at Logan. Trevor's expression told her what to say. Logan's expression told her nothing. For once, he was not going to make the choice easier. Madison swallowed. "No." The attorney relaxed. Then she continued. "No, I didn't believe that. But not because he was incapable." The attorney's smile disappeared. Madison's voice broke. "I made him feel incapable." Trevor leaned forward. His lawyer whispered urgently. Madison kept speaking. "I took over bills he could have handled. I changed passwords. I pressured him because I wanted control of the estate." Logan closed his eyes. "I told myself I was helping him," Madison said. "I wasn't." The attorney interrupted. "Ms. Jenkins, please answer only the question asked." Rebecca rose. "Your Honor, this testimony directly concerns the claim regarding Mr. Jenkins's capacity." The judge allowed Madison to continue. She admitted pushing Logan toward senior living. She admitted favoring herself during the estate division. Then she described the farmhouse. I laughed when I gave it to him. Her voice collapsed. I thought it was worthless. Logan stared at the table. And your husband Rebecca asked later. Madison looked toward Trevor. He asked about the Kentucky property before the estate meeting. How long before months? Did he tell you why? No, he said it had no value. Rebecca displayed records showing Trevor's research into Ash Hollow. Then came Henry's surveys, Evelyn's tax receipts, historical deeds, corporate correspondence, finally Trevor's communications with Calder Ridge representatives. The defense attorneys objected repeatedly, but the pattern had become difficult to dismiss. By late afternoon, the judge issued an interim order halting Calder Ridge's current development activity around the disputed parcels until the records could be independently examined. The court also authorized expanded discovery into historical land transactions involving the predecessor companies. Outside reporters surrounded Rebecca. Walter embraced Dorothy. Calvin cried openly. Someone tried to congratulate Logan. He shook his head. We haven't won yet. For him, the order was not justice. It was permission to keep searching for it. Madison emerged from the courthouse alone. Logan stood beside Evelyn's pickup. She approached slowly. I'm sorry. He studied his daughter. For the first time, Madison was not asking him to fix anything. You told the truth today, Logan said. I should have told it sooner. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. Do you hate me? Logan looked toward the families gathering behind Rebecca. No. Madison almost seemed relieved. Then he'd added, but that doesn't mean everything is repaired. She nodded. I know. Logan climbed into the truck. As he drove back toward Ash Hollow, he thought about Henry. For decades, people had believed his father was a failure because powerful men controlled the story. They had tried something similar with Logan. Old, confused, grieving, easy to manipulate. But the man they expected to remain silent had finally spoken. And because he had 14 families now, had the chance to make the truth speak with him. The excavation began 9 days after the hearing. This time Logan Jenkins did not enter the barn carrying a pry bar and Walter's kerosene lantern. A court-authorized team arrived with survey equipment cameras, evidence containers, structural engineers, and 2 independent investigators assigned to document everything removed from beneath the farmhouse. Rebecca Lawson stood beside Logan as technicians lifted the concrete hatch. What happens if there's nothing else? Logan asked. We already have enough to keep fighting. That isn't what I asked. Rebecca understood. Henry's ledgers had repeatedly referenced an original archive, yet nobody had located it. If the archive still existed, it could transform a complicated civil case into something Calder Ridge could no longer explain away. The investigators entered the chamber. Hours passed. Boxes were catalogued, maps were photographed, measurements were taken. Then an engineer noticed something strange about the western wall. It was shorter internally than the exterior foundation dimensions suggested it should be. A thermal scanner confirmed an empty space behind it. Logan felt his pulse quicken. A removable metal panel was discovered behind shelving. When technicians pulled it free, a second sealed compartment appeared. Nobody spoke. An investigator entered first. Several minutes later, he returned, carrying a waterproof metal case. Then another. And another. 7 cases emerged. Inside the first were notarized copies of original property deeds. The second contained payment records. The third held survey reports. Another contained transcripts of recorded interviews Henry had conducted with farmers who claimed company representatives threatened or misled them. Then Rebecca opened a folder that changed everything. Internal correspondence. One letter instructed brokers to secure specific parcels before geological information became public. Another discussed using boundary adjustments to resolve resistant owners. A third referenced financial pressure against farmers unwilling to sell. The language was restrained, professional, almost polite. That made it worse. Lives had been destroyed through sentences written by men sitting safely behind desks. Walter stood near Logan when investigators produced documents involving the Brooks property. Walter saw his father's signature. Then he saw an internal valuation completed months before the sale. The company had estimated the mineral potential beneath the Brooks acreage at many times what Walter's family had received. Walter sat down. My father thought he failed us. Logan placed a hand on his shoulder. He didn't. Walter covered his face. For more than 50 years he had carried another man's manufactured shame. Across Ash Hollow, similar revelations followed. Dorothy Washington learned that the missing acreage from her parents' farm had been transferred through a boundary revision unsupported by the original deed. Calvin Parker found correspondence showing his grandfather had rejected an initial offer shortly before lenders unexpectedly demanded payment on debts. The archive did not merely suggest misconduct, it showed a system. Calder Ridge's legal strategy changed within days. Publicly, the corporation denied responsibility for decisions made by predecessor companies decades earlier. Privately, its attorneys requested settlement discussions. Rebecca warned Logan not to expect an apology. They'll negotiate because the evidence is dangerous, not because they suddenly developed a conscience. That's fine, Logan said. I don't need them to feel sorry. The negotiations lasted weeks. Calder Ridge ultimately agreed to a substantial settlement covering verified claims from affected Ash Hollow families, rather than risk a public fraud trial and possible criminal referrals involving historical and more recent conduct. Some families received financial compensation, others regained disputed acreage where restoration remained legally possible. For Dorothy, the money mattered less than the corrected property record bearing her family name. She held the document against her chest and cried, "My father should have lived to see this." Logan understood. Henry should have too. Then Rebecca called Logan into her temporary office. "There's your individual property claim." Logan sat down. Calder Ridge still wanted access to the limestone formation beneath his land, but now negotiations would occur legally, transparently, and on Logan's terms. They're offering just over $6 million for limited mineral and access rights. Logan stared at her. $6 million you retain ownership of the farmhouse and surface property under the proposed agreement. He thought about Madison laughing over $15. The contrast almost seemed absurd. Can they take the farmhouse? No. Then tell them that part is non-negotiable. Rebecca smiled. I already did. Logan accepted the agreement only after independent experts reviewed the environmental and property protections. The farmhouse remained his. The barn remained his. The land that Henry had once been driven from would remain in the Jenkins family. The county's condemnation action disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared. Officials withdrew the notices after independent inspections established a legitimate repair plan. Trevor's situation moved in the opposite direction. The gasoline container, the attempted entry into the chamber, and his communications with Calder Ridge representatives supported criminal charges related to attempted evidence destruction and conspiracy. Logan felt no satisfaction watching Trevor enter court. Justice, he discovered, did not always feel like victory. Sometimes it simply felt like an old wound finally being cleaned. Madison separated from Trevor. The decision cost her financially. Accounts became tied up in legal proceedings. Investments she had assumed would guarantee her lifestyle were threatened or lost. The large house in Cleveland was eventually placed on the market. Months earlier, Madison would have considered that catastrophic. Now she understood that she had nearly traded her father for those things. One afternoon, her car appeared outside the Kentucky farmhouse. Logan was repairing a garden fence. Madison approached alone. No Trevor, no attorney, no expensive handbag, no documents. "I'm not here about the settlement," she said. Logan continued working. "I didn't think you were. I heard it was more than $6 million. "It is." Madison nodded. "I don't want any of it." Logan finally looked at her. She had rehearsed apologies before. This time she had brought none. "I was cruel to you," she said. "Trevor manipulated me, but I keep wanting to use that as an excuse." Logan remained silent. He didn't make me greedy. He didn't make me laugh. I did that." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry, Dad." Logan wanted to embrace her. That instinct had survived everything. But love and trust were no longer the same thing. "I may forgive you completely someday." Madison nodded through tears. "But forgiveness doesn't put trust back where it was." "I know. You rebuild that." How Logan looked toward the farmhouse. "One honest thing at a time." Madison wiped her face. "I can do that. We'll see." There was no dramatic embrace, not yet. But Logan offered her coffee. She accepted. They sat on the porch as evening settled over Ash Hollow. Neither tried to repair decades in one conversation. For Logan, that restraint was its own kind of healing. Later, after Madison left, he walked to the barn. The underground archive was now protected as evidence, its contents professionally preserved. Logan stood above the place where everything had begun. What had truly been buried beneath the farmhouse was not a fortune. It was proof. Proof that Henry Jenkins had not failed. Proof that Evelyn's secrecy had carried purpose. Proof that families dismissed for generations had been telling the truth. And proof that the daughter who betrayed Logan could lose his trust without destroying his capacity to love. Logan finally understood something Evelyn had known before him. Justice was not revenge. Justice was truth given enough daylight that nobody could bury it again. 1 year after investigators opened the second chamber beneath the north barn, Logan Jenkins stood on the farmhouse porch, watching morning sunlight move across the Kentucky hills. The place no longer looked abandoned. The roof had been replaced. The windows had been repaired. Fresh white paint covered the weathered exterior, though Logan had deliberately preserved several original beams and porch posts. He could have built something enormous. $6 million gave a man options. But Logan did not want a mansion. He wanted a home. Inside, Evelyn's blue coffee mug still sat beside his own. He no longer made 2 cups every morning. That had taken months. At first, making only one felt like admitting Evelyn was truly gone. Eventually, Logan understood that accepting her absence did not mean abandoning her. Some mornings he still spoke to her. "You should see the garden, Ev." Or Walter cheated at cards again. He imagined her correcting him. Walter Brooks would have insisted that Logan was the cheater. Their friendship had become one of the unexpected gifts of Ash Hollow. Walter never tried to replace anyone Logan had lost. He simply appeared. Sometimes with lumber, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with nothing except an afternoon to waste on the porch. That was enough. The barn had changed even more dramatically. Its foundation had been reinforced, its roof restored, and the underground chamber professionally stabilized. But Logan refused to erase its history. Above the entrance hung a modest wooden sign, Jenkins Rural Heritage Archive. Copies of Henry's records were stored there, alongside documents donated by Ash Hollow families. The originals remained protected under professional archival conditions. School groups occasionally visited. University researchers came too. But the people Logan cared most about were elderly men and women who arrived carrying old folders their parents had once been ashamed to show anyone. Logan listened to every one of them. Using part of his settlement, he established the Jenkins Rural Heritage Fund. Its purpose was simple: provide legal assistance to older landowners facing predatory contracts, suspicious property transfers, or pressure from corporations with deeper pockets than theirs. Rebecca Lawson helped organize the legal network. She initially warned Logan that the fund could become expensive. "That's what the money is for," he told her. "You could invest more of it. I am investing it. In what people who shouldn't have to lose everything before someone listens." Rebecca had no argument for that. Ash Hollow changed too. Not overnight, not perfectly. But families who had once carried stories of failure began telling stories of survival instead. Dorothy Washington used part of her settlement to repair her parents' old house. Calvin Parker recovered a portion of disputed acreage and planted trees along the boundary his grandfather had once fought to defend. Walter visited his parents' former land after the property record was corrected. He stood there for almost an hour without speaking. When Logan asked if he was all right, Walter nodded. "I just wish my father could know." Logan understood exactly. I think we spend too much time wishing the dead could see what happened. Walter looked at him. What should we do instead? Make sure the living remember. Walter smiled. That sounds like something Evelyn would say. Probably why I stole it. They laughed. A year earlier, laughter would have felt impossible. Now it came naturally. Madison's transformation was quieter. After separating from Trevor, she lost much of the lifestyle she had once treated as proof of success. The Cleveland house was sold. Several investments became entangled in Trevor's legal problems. For the first time in years, Madison needed an ordinary job. She found one managing accounts for a small medical supply company. The salary embarrassed her at first. Then something strange happened. She began liking the person she was when nobody cared what car she drove. Madison visited Logan twice a month. During her first visits, she always arrived tense, as though waiting for her father to punish her. He never did. He also never pretended nothing had happened. When she offered advice about his money, he politely refused. When she asked questions about the fund, he answered. When she apologized again, he said, "I heard you the first time." Trust returned in increments too small to measure. One Saturday morning, Madison arrived wearing jeans and old sneakers. Logan was digging beside the farmhouse. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Garden. You hate gardening. Your mother loved it." Madison looked at the empty patch. "Can I help?" Logan almost answered automatically. Then he stopped. A year earlier, Madison had wanted to control his property. Today, she was asking permission to touch the dirt. He handed her a shovel. "Start there." They worked for hours. They planted tomatoes, beans, peppers, and several rows of flowers Evelyn had loved. Madison was terrible at keeping the rows straight. Logan told her so. She laughed. It was not the cruel laughter from the estate meeting. This laughter carried no superiority, only warmth. When they finished, Madison followed him inside for water. That was when she noticed the frame on the living room wall. Inside it was the old property document. The $15 assessment. Madison stopped. "You framed that." "I did." "Why?" Logan came beside her. Madison stared at the number. $15. Her face changed. "I hate remembering that day. I don't." She looked at him in surprise. "You should." Logan shook his head. "That paper reminds me of the day you thought you were giving me nothing." Madison lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, I know." He touched the edge of the frame. "For a while I thought what happened underneath that barn was the miracle. The settlement, no. The evidence, partly." Logan looked through the window toward the fields. "What I found down there gave Henry his name back. It gave families the truth. It gave me financial security." He paused. "But none of that was the most important thing I found." Madison waited. "I found out that losing what someone else thinks makes you valuable doesn't make you worthless." Her eyes filled. "You took the house in Cleveland. I lost your mother. I thought my life had been reduced to whatever was left." He smiled faintly. "Turns out I was still Logan Jenkins." Madison cried quietly. This time Logan embraced her. Not because the past had disappeared, because it no longer controlled what came next. That evening, after Madison drove away, Logan carried 2 cups of coffee onto the porch. Walter was already sitting there. "You expecting somebody?" Walter asked, eyeing the second cup. "You?" Walter accepted it. Below them, the new garden caught the last light. Beyond it stood the restored barn. Farther away stretched the land. Henry once lost, Evelyn secretly protected, Madison mocked, and Logan nearly abandoned before understanding what it meant. The sun lowered behind the hills. Logan thought about the strange journey that had brought him there. He had arrived believing he was an unwanted old man carrying the leftovers of a ruined life. Now people came to him for help. He had arrived mourning a family. Now he understood family could break, change, heal, and still become something worth protecting. The farmhouse had been worth far more than $15. But money had never been its true value. Its true value was what it forced Logan to remember: dignity could not be inherited. It could not be transferred through a deed. And no child corporation betrayal or bank account could take it from someone who finally understood that it belonged to him. Sometimes, what others leave you because they believe it is worthless becomes the very ground on which you rebuild your life. Logan leaned back as the Kentucky sky turned gold. For the first time in a very long while, he was not looking backward. He was home,